we're at like 270 something. We know some of you had some conflicts and have had to miss one session or another. I see our numbers are already approaching 200 as we're letting folks in. But welcome to our Wednesday night community. We were saying before you joined just how much we all look forward to this every Wednesday night. We talk about it through the week, what we're doing. We really think about some of the comments that either you shared in your reflections or during the kind of the after session. And it's helped us really consider what you need and be a little bit more nimble to make sure that whatever we're coming up with is best meeting your needs. I'm about to hand this over, but Ms. Shanthia Washington and I have been trying to create a curriculum that was aligned to your needs sequentially. So what we've been doing up to this point is really kind of setting you up. And so now we're kind of like digging into the work. I want to pass, I see Miss Washington. She and I have been up at the top of the state today. We've been in Florence and we're rushing home to our respective homes to get to see you tonight. So I'm going to pass the mic to Miss Washington so she can say hello as well.
Good evening, all. Thank you for being here tonight. We have another exciting session for you. So we just want you to sit back, relax, listen, and absorb all of this knowledge so that you can go out and implement it within your classroom. So I am not going to hold up the time. I'm going to pass that baton right on back to Melissa so that we can get started. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to recap, so for any of you who are new and just for all of us that might need a refresher, so I can't believe it that we are in, this is, 6 weeks. So we are in the middle of our 12 weeks. Outside of starting off the very first get started, we've discussed ethics. We've established classroom norms using the constructs of Harry Wong. Jennifer Brown and Lane Diller did an amazing job really setting us up for what does classroom management look like in the elementary classroom, what does it look like in the secondary classroom. Your feedback and your intersession homework assignments were incredible. We so appreciate you being so vulnerable and reflective in the work, what's working, what's not working. Last week, Dr. Garner and I really enjoyed having a conversation with you about classroom discipline as well as foundational wellness, not just for students, but for you too. And once again, we really spent a lot of time reading through your comments, particularly those that we didn't ask. We really appreciate the comments that we get from you that were unsolicited, because those often really hit the hardest for us to let us know that this work is impactful. And also that we're striking the right chords. So now that we've kind of laid that foundation, we're really getting into the content and to make sure that instruction is where it needs to be. As you probably noticed when you joined tonight, you got to notice that this was being live streamed. We wanted to just go ahead and be recording this to YouTube. This is no one is watching it, for the record. This is just going into a private our private YouTube channel, and I'll do the same thing that we do every week. At the end of this session, I'll go through and kind of clean up all this stuff. So most of this part will be removed and the actual recording will be the instruction itself. So we usually stop right around 8 or whenever we just kind of get to that place where folks are asking questions, because we want you to be able to ask questions with all the freedoms that you would have in a classroom setting. We want you to be able to feel vulnerable to ask questions that are important to you and not have to worry what others are thinking. Don't forget to complete your attendance survey. You guys have been amazing on that. We know some of you had some technical issues before and we were able to work around that. Real quick about PowerSchool, just a reminder, you do not have to do anything in PowerSchool. That is completely up to you. As if you want the PowerSchool credit, you want to get those hours credit, then absolutely go in and register. And it usually takes a few days. Like if you register for tonight's session, it usually takes about 3 or 4 days, because we have to go through all 200, of you to make sure that you indeed attended. So it doesn't happen that night. But that is certainly an option to you if you're trying to grow your PowerSchool professional learning history. This is where you would go to do that. Everything we do, we put on the prep resource doc. So anytime you email me, that's the first thing I usually say, go check the resource doc. We've already put it up there. We've been doing great on norms. Just continue to respect those norms. And if there's ever an opportunity for us to go in and reflect at the norms that we have established collectively, we want to hear from you. The most important thing is just to be present, to be a part of this community, to listen to your peers, and anything that we learn, I can say for myself and the other instructors, we are taking responsibility for that impact, and we ask that you do the same. What you learn, we want you to turn this around in your classroom to not only become the most accomplished teacher that you can, but also to provide the most optimal classroom experience for your students. Now with that, okay, let me do this better this time. I'm going to do a much better job this time. So what we like to see is if you feel free to do so. We know some of you got little ones around. If you would kind of stand up straight, we want to do a couple pictures to collect your school colors. So I'm going to do a few. Okay, I see Wilhelmina's getting in place. Thank you. Okay, I see Miss Hooks. I'm going to do a couple. All right. Does anyone see Lee Twig? Lee? Okay, I'm gonna do. Okay, now I'm getting the rest of you. Who is that? Does that say Beverly Wildcat? Okay, I see. Here we go. One more. I love how you're using your backgrounds. That's awesome. We will actually be doing something with our backgrounds in a couple weeks. Okay, I see. What is CCHS? I'm trying to decide what school that is. I see the Patriots, Tyler. Okay, I see a lot of purple in the room. Awesome. Thank you for that. Yeah, we'll be posting that later. After I saw how well Lee had really prepared for tonight, I ran in and got a spirit stick because I coached competitive cheerleading for a long time. If you've ever been a cheer coach, you got a whole bunch of these and my pom-poms. And are you really a fan if you do not have cowbells in the South? So I ran down and got some of those as well. Lee, did you want to say something? Did I see a hand raise, or was that a cowbell? Okay. Well, listen, I am going to quit sharing my screen and I am going to pass it to the real instructors tonight. And we have a very special guest, and I'm excited that they will be introducing in just a moment. But Mr. Jones, it is all yours, and I will be helping man the chat. Miss Washington and I will be on the sidelines tonight. So any questions we see, we'll be happy to point them your way.
Awesome. Hopefully, well, good evening, everyone. Hopefully you can see my screen. Hope everyone is, I'm working from just my laptop. I wish I was home and had both my screens. That would probably help me, but I'm working just from my laptop. But good evening. We are excited to be with you tonight. I'm gonna skip ahead and get us caught up. Excited to be here tonight to talk about locating standards and proficiency scales. I quickly will introduce myself and then allow my co-host and co-presenters tonight to introduce themselves. But my name is William Jones. I work in the Office of School Improvement for the Alabama State Department of Education. And you can see my email address is there. And I know later tonight when we get to the end, you may have questions. So I just wanted you to know that our contact information is available to you on this slide. So if my co-presenters will unmute and while we have our names and emails up, introduce yourselves for the group. Shane, you want to go first?
Right now, I think I had mute messed up, but you can try now.
There we go. Good evening, everyone. I'm Shane Haws, and I am a middle school science specialist for AMSTI. That stands for Alabama's Math, Science, and Technology Initiative. I'm based at the State Department in Montgomery. My email is a little bit different. It's my first name, william.haws@alsde.edu. Glad to be here with everyone tonight.
And I'm Keri Richburg, the middle school math specialist for AMSTI at the ALSDE. Shane is my science counterpart, and we're happy to be with you tonight.
Thank you. So last week, full transparency, when Dr. Shields announced that I had a surprise plan for you, it kind of caught me off guard. I had not planned a surprise just yet. But then my wheels started turning and I thought, who would be the perfect person that we could have as a guest on the night where we did Spirit Night? And so I sent a quick text and and I got a phone call right back from Mr. Alvin Briggs, who serves as the executive director of the Alabama High School Athletic Association, who knows all about school spirit. And so I asked if Mr. Briggs would be willing to just share a word of encouragement with you all, and just talk a little bit about his story before we took a deep dive into standards and all the meat of tonight, that if he would just be willing to share with you all. So I'm going to give him a little bit of time, and if you will help me just welcome him to our group.
Well, thank you, William. I really appreciate that introduction. Just a little side note, how I got to know William. Mr. Steve Savarese, who was the previous executive director, heard William sing the national anthem at a program in Baldwin County. And from there, William and I bond a relationship, because he would come and sing God Bless America for us before the Super 7 in football and Super 7 in basketball at our state championships. What a tremendous voice. If you have not heard William sing, you need to hear him sing. Oh my God. The first time I heard him sing, I got tears. And the last time I heard him sing, I got tears, because he brings that kind of love and strength to his voice. It's just a God-fearing voice. So I want to, announce how we got to know each other, and he's a great friend. William also told me while we was on the call, I told him that I would love to do this, because I started in education through an emergency certificate. I had no qualms or no things about teaching, even though one of my favorite teachers in high school never taught me. She was a Spanish teacher that I never had a class from, but she made a difference in my life. So that's where I get my strength from, because I think about her all the time. But you guys, I'm jealous, because when I got my emergency certificate, I was just thrust into the classroom. I didn't have this great form that you have someone to guide you through your first year of being in the classroom. So I'm jealous. I'm extremely jealous, because this is a great platform. And I truly understand what you're going through. I want to tell you one thing that you have that I wish you would never stop, because I hear there's 200 plus people on this call with emergency certificates. You have a chance to form a bond, a fellowship bond that can create with one another, that you all can lean on for the rest of your life, for the rest of your time that you're teaching. Because you all know what each other's going through, and you can lend each other a hand. And with that said, don't ever be afraid to ask for help. I think that's the first thing we as adults do sometimes, is that we don't ask for help. And I think we all need to ask for help from time to time. I think that's important, especially when you're doing what I think is the most important job there is. Billy Graham once quoted that a teacher will influence more people in 1 year than the average person in a lifetime. I want you to think about that. I want you to think about that as you go throughout the night and you go throughout this program. A teacher will influence more people in 1 year than an average person in a lifetime. You have a chance to influence and mold and tomorrow and America's and especially the state of Alabama's future. That is one of the great joys that I miss now, is the day-to-day interaction with students in the hallway, in the classroom. That to me is the one gift that you have a chance to mold. Don't ever minimize the importance of what you do, because what you're doing and how you're doing it is the reason why you're doing it now. You might not think so, but there was a teacher, there was an educator somewhere in your life, somewhere down the line that influenced you to go, well, hey, I think I can do this. No matter what you were doing before now, you believe you can be a teacher. And the part of being a teacher is always being willing to learn. And don't ever get to the point where you think you know everything. Don't ever get to the point where you think you don't need to learn anything. Because at that point, you're doing yourself a disjustice, and you're also doing the people that are dependent on your disjustice. Because everybody needs somebody, and everybody needs to learn. There's never going to come a time where you don't need to learn what you're doing and get better at what you're doing. When I was thrust into the emergency certificate, not only did was I asked to be the head coach of a football team, I was asked to be the athletic director, and I also was asked to be an assistant principal. So I had a lot of things I had to try to learn in a short period of time. And the most important thing that I was told by my principal, it was never to get to not ask for help, and to never think that I knew it all. And I still take that to heart today, because that's the way you learn. So in that first year, also with all those roles, I still had to go to class. I was going into class at AUM, and I was going to class at Troy 2 nights a week for almost a year and a half. So I had all those things going on, then still trying to do my prep for I had to teach 2 history classes. So I still had to do my prep for 2 history classes. I still had my assignments I had to do as an athletic director, still had these, and I took it as a challenge. I took it as a challenge that I was going to do the best I possibly could do. And I hope that's what you're doing. I hope you're taking all this as a challenge, that you will do the best and be the best you possibly can be, and that you overcome it. You know, we don't often think that teaching and being in the classroom is competitive, but I would dare say it is, because you want to be the best classroom teacher there is, because there are people dependent on you. Don't succumb to peer pressure. I often tell people that peer pressure doesn't stop when you turn 18. The worst peer pressure that you can get are from adults that don't want you to do better than what they're doing. They always want you to stay at a certain point and stay and don't be aggressive. Don't do a better job than them. They just want you to go through the motions. But I dare say don't do that, because that classroom that you're sitting in, those 25 to 30 students are dependent on you, whether you believe it or not. And my one last thing before I get off, I would ask you that when you're standing around the hallway and you're talking to your peers, don't let them discourage you by the student. Don't let them sway you by the student. Learn that student for yourself. That student is dependent on you. Whatever they're doing in that one class doesn't mean they have to do it in your class. You determine on how those students act in your class, how they behave in your class, how they learn in your class. How they learn in your class. You determine that. And I hope you take this to heart, that you are molding tomorrow's future. I hope you sit around 30 years from now and somebody you taught has become the mayor of whatever city, has become a senator, has become a doctor, has become a lawyer. Somebody that's going to call you back and say, hey, I thank you for what you did for me when I was in your class. You might not even remember being in that class. You might not even remember they were in your class, but something you said or something you do is going to mold that student. So take heart that what you're doing means a lot to someone, whether you believe that or not. Take heart that somebody in that class is dependent on you getting them over the hump. Everybody can learn. It's just we got to be willing to find that way to teach them. And I'm sure that you can. And again, I'm jealous that you have this platform that you can learn on, that you have a chance to ask questions and do all the different things that I was not able to do, because there are no dumb questions. Believe me, there are no dumb questions. So don't be afraid to ask those questions about anything that's going on that y'all have during this session. And if I can help you in any way, please reach out to me. My email address and everything is on our website. And I'm gonna do one other favor. I always do this, and William will tell you, if you got something to write on, I'm gonna give you my phone number. My phone number is 334-590-5252. I say it again, it's 334-590-5252. And if I can help you in any way, if I can come to your class and do anything for you, please don't hesitate. I might not be able to do it that day, but I will fit you into my schedule somehow, some way to come do whatever you need me to do. I would love to be in that classroom just to sit and observe you teaching, enjoying those students, because like I said, I do miss the students, the day-to-day interaction, but I will be glad to help you in any way. And I'll leave you with that Billy Graham quote one more time, that you as a teacher will affect more people in 1 year than the average person in a lifetime. William, thank you for having me on. Miss Melissa, thank you. Thank y'all, thank y'all, thank y'all.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Briggs. It is, it's a joy every time I get to talk with you and learn from you. And I thank you for sharing your spirit towards education and the work that we do with our team tonight, with our group tonight. I know they, just looking at some of the things in the chat, certainly appreciate everything you shared. Your story is certainly inspirational. And now that they've met you and know that they can survive this this time in their career where they're learning so many things and it's hitting them from so many different directions, that they can survive, and not only survive but thrive in this world. So and in this career. So thank you again for hanging out a little bit with us tonight. I know our participants are certainly thankful for that, and I am as well. So thanks again.
Well, thank y'all. Y'all have a good evening.
You too. Thank you. We're going to jump right into our session. We have quite a few things to get to cover tonight, but a lot of this may be a review for some of you. Some of this may be what was reviewed, which is what your districts may have went over with you at the beginning of the semester or when you joined the team in your individual schools. So hopefully some of this is a refresher. Some of it may be new for you. We hope that you'll gather some resources tonight. You'll have a few websites that you now can reach out to, and even knowing us, that you can reach out to us if you have any questions as it relates to what we discussed tonight. So our goals for tonight are locating course of study standards, discuss and review instructional pacing, and to find and preview proficiency scales. So that's our 3 goals for tonight. We'll move as quickly as possible, but we also want to make sure that we're taking enough time so that you know how to find these things, locate these things outside of our session tonight. I also do want to do a quick little blast real quick. Dr. Shields did not say this, but today is actually her birthday, and she is spending her birthday night with us. So happy birthday, Dr. Shields. We certainly thank you for giving of your time to be with us tonight, and we'll owe you some sort of big birthday celebration.
And this is birthday present enough. I wouldn't be anywhere else.
I know you are enjoying this too, but I also know that giving up your birthday night is a big deal. So our first goal for tonight is, again, looking at our course of study standards. I'm going to ask you just to help judge a little bit about where we are in terms of your knowledge of the course of study. Give me a feel for what you're thinking right now. I'm going to ask you to kind of respond to the prompt that you see on the screen. And in just a second, I'll throw up a QR code for you to respond, but I'll give you your 4 options. So your 4 options are going to be standards are like, and you can see image 1 is a sound bar. Image 2 is someone, what appears to be baking. Image 3 is a football game, football team, and image 4 looks like a traffic jam to me, but I'm going to throw up a QR code. And if you will, if you've got your phone, your device, if you will respond, you'll see the QR code on your screen. You can scan that QR code. I'm going to ask you to, I'm also going to participate just to make sure it's all working as well. But if you'll scan that QR code, it should take you to our poll for the night, and then I'll let you give your response if we're a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4. Right, this looks like our responses are coming in. Looks like a lot of folks consider standards to be a lot like baking. And I think I can absolutely make that connection. And it looks like our runner-up here is maybe the traffic jam, which I can also make that connection. I think when we think about what standards are and how we utilize them, they absolutely represent maybe the ingredients of our courses and what we teach. They also can feel like a freeway full of cars all trying to get to the same location. And I think, but I can see soundboard, because you got to get the right balance. Football team, everybody's got to be playing their part, just like standards. So loving these ideas, but it looks like baking's leading our charge here. We may also have a few bakers in the room, so maybe they're just finding their people in the group. So when we think about standards, content standards, we may come back and see at the end of the night where we landed, but content standards contain the minimum required content and define what students should know or be able to do at the conclusion of a grade or course. Some have substandards, and they indicate with an A, B, or C, which are extensions of the content standards and are also required. So this little excerpt comes directly from our ELA course of study. It is replicated in language in our math course of study as well. That just gives us an idea of what, in terms of Alabama, how we define the idea of content standards. And it also puts into motion, or says very clearly, that these are required items that we cover in these particular grades and courses. We also in Alabama take a standards-based approach to what we do in instruction. And so standards-based approach means that teachers begin with the identified instructional standards for a particular course or grade level, and then teachers sequence the development of the knowledge and skills required by these standards and design instruction along specific lines that foster that development. Resources such as textbooks are used to aid that development, but they no longer are the primary organizing force for the curriculum. And so in Alabama, we are a standards-based approach state. We believe that standards create the foundation for everything that we teach for every course and in every grade level. And so that approach is verified and it is validated in the course of study. It is all the language you'll see that comes from us at the State Department kind of establishes that as what our expectation is. So this particular excerpt comes from the book that you see on the right. So if you're looking for something to add to your library, this is one of the books that we used, and some of the work that Keri and Shane will reference later. The work that we did with proficiency scales is also kind of talked about and discussed in this particular text. But you'll notice that for some of you, it may be that right now we're leaning into our curriculum, our textbooks, the resources that our district has given us, and that's sort of driving what we're doing in our instruction. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, and sometimes that's our comfort zone when we first start, but want to be very clear that in our state and our expectation is that our standards and our course of study drive what we do every day in our classrooms. And so why are standards important? Why is it important that we locate and we're using what the state has approved for us to be teaching every day? Well, there's several reasons for that, and you'll see some of those on the screen. Some of the ones I'll point out is like bullet 2 that talks about eliminating variability in what students learn. It's important for us and in our state that if a student is in 3rd grade and they're up in north end of the state, and they're sitting in 3rd grade in Huntsville, and then a student that's down in 3rd grade in Mobile, that we have the same objectives and learning standards that are being utilized in those classrooms, so that we're having some consistency from grade to grade and from school to school, district to district across our state, and then eliminate some of the variability that comes in when we're not using standards that can take us all in different directions. And so this standards in the course of study give us a roadmap of what those expectations are, and it puts into play this idea that the expectations across our state are similar. So state standards focus on school or district accountability as well. So our accountability system is absolutely connected to the expectation that standards are taught. That comes into play for most of you, you'll see that interconnectedness when we talk about spring testing, when you got the ACAP or the ACT, that those same standards that are measured on those assessments, those are the standards that you're teaching day to day in your classes. So some additional benefits of standard-based learning, you'll see all those on the screen. Again, I'm not going to read all those to you, but these are some of the ideas behind why it's important that we take the standards-based approach. And knowing and understanding your course of study standards becomes paramount in what you do every day and the instruction that you're providing to students. So the next thing I want to give you, and we'll access this together, is all of our course of studies are housed in one location in our state. And the website, you'll see that there's a screenshot on your screen, but you can also access this via the QR code. So if you have your device, if you want to scan the screen, it'll take you directly to this website. But I'm going to click over there in just a second once folks have a chance to grab the QR code, as well as if one of my co-presenters or one of our other ALSDE folks on the chat will post the link in the chat, so our participants may be able to click directly from the chat. But if you'll click on this, I'm going to click on the screenshot, but you may click on the link that's posted in the chat. It will take you directly to alabamastandards.org. And hopefully I may have to stop sharing and then share again, just so it picks up our Alabama standards. Yeah, and here we go. Hopefully you all can see that. And we'll just start with the first one, which is our arts education. So if you click on arts education, you'll then notice that for arts, we have courses of study for dance, for media arts, music, theater, and visual arts. So if I'm an art teacher, I would click, and let's say that I teach theater, I would click on theater, and then I would click on, let's say that I teach theater in the 8th grade. I would click on the 8th grade. And then I may select, let's say I'm working on responding, click here, and it narrows down, continues to filter down. And notice on the right-hand side of my screen, we start seeing our standards for each of our courses populate. And so you can see those listed here, and I can see that this is what is expected of me to cover, what content. And so you can also expand each of these, and you'll start seeing your full course of study listed here on the left-hand side, and then you can click through and say, okay, this is what is expected for me and for my students, what I have to teach as we move throughout the course of the school year. So I'm going to go back to the main page, and you'll see that there are, you'll see our DLCS standards, which is digital literacy and computer science, our English language arts, one of our newer courses of study, math as well. And then you can scroll down. For those of you that are in CTE programs, your CTE courses of study are also housed here. For those of you that are teaching alternate programs, special ed, whatever that may look like, those alternate standards are available here, as well as if any of you are working with our ELL students, our English as a second language students, the standards that are expected for those students and what guides our work with those students are also listed here. So we house everything here. Now, you may have been given a different version in terms of you may have been given the full PDF document that's hundreds of pages long, or you may be accessing your course of study in going a different route. But this is our official housing website of all of our courses of study here in the state. So others of you may be using another popular website that we manage here at the department is our ALEX website. So if you would, some of you are going to say like, well, this is where I find my course of study, and that is absolutely fine. We love that. And I'll show you why we love that in just a second. But if you want to click over here, you're welcome to follow the QR code. Will take you there. We'll also have one of our instructors is going to put that link in the chat for you. And so before we take a deep look at ALEX, I want to talk through an idea first, because I'm going to show you something on the ALEX website in just a second. But my first question for you, we're going to use another Poll Everywhere resource, is if I were to use the phrase unpack a standard, what does that mean to you? So what does it mean to unpack a standard? So I'm going to throw up a QR code again, and I'm going to ask you, if you will, using your device, if you will scan that QR code and just answer that question for me. What does it mean to you if I say, what does it mean to unpack a standard? Now, our first response coming in, breaking it down into teachable units. I do not know. That is absolutely perfect. That lets me know that what we're talking about is something we need to talk about. To dig deep, teach all parts, to teach explicitly, loving that language, to understand the meaning, to plan well, absolutely. To understand and implement the material, great thoughts, loving that. Break it down into teachable lesson. Also, breaking it down. Yep. So I think it means to take the action verbs and to form your objective statements for your class lesson. That's the practical application. Break it down to smaller parts. Absolutely. To dive deeper. Yes. So and to plan. Unpacking a standard is all of those things. It's understanding all of what it means. To break it down into simple, relatable steps, break down for understanding. That means to address all parts of the standard, find out what prior knowledge is needed to teach a standard. Yes. Break it down into manageable parts. Love that. Pull back the layers. I like that phrasing as well. Breaking it down step by step is planning. Break it up. Absolutely. I think we got the general idea of what it means to unpack. So y'all keep throwing those in. I'm loving reading all those. Might steal some of the phrasing that you're using when I talk about unpacking in the future. So when we talk about unpacking a standard, I'll tell you what I have done my entire career. Doesn't mean that it's the only way to do it, but this is the process that I use when I'm unpacking a standard. So it is all those things that you all were putting in the chat. It is this idea of I need to dive deeper into my standard. I need to pull back those layers. Love that phrasing. And I need to fully understand what, as a teacher, I'm being asked to do. What do I need? What do I have to understand in order for me to convey that concept and that content to our teachers? And so, not to our teachers, to our students. So I use what's called a KUD, and that's simply when I'm looking at a standard and I'm unpacking it, my first question is, what do students need to know? What are the facts, the vocabulary? Are there rules that are applied here in order for students to be successful in mastering the standard? What do we need to understand? What are the concepts, the big ideas, the connections that need to be made to this particular standard? And then what do students need to do? What should students be able to do when we complete the lesson, when I complete reviewing this objective? What are those necessary skills? How are they going to show me that they have mastered this particular standard? And so that is the sort of what we sometimes, I'll call it a CUD or a KUD. I will use the chart that you see on the screen. I wanted you to have this. So if I'm planning my lesson, I'm sort of starting here. Like, when I'm looking at my standard, do I fully understand, before I can help kids get it, do I fully understand the standard, all of its parts, all the expectations? What does it mean to master this particular concept at this grade level? So these are the questions that I'm asking. And as I'm creating my lesson plans, which you all are going to talk about next week, this is sort of my starting point. So on the ALEX website, and the reason why I wanted to start kind of interject the KUD here is the ALEX website, which is fantastic, kind of does some of this legwork for you. So I want to show you a couple of examples. So I'm going to click over to the ALEX website. And hopefully you all can still see. Can you see the ALEX website? Yes, perfect. Awesome. Thank you. If I'm on the ALEX website, which I think has been put in the chat for you, if I hover over standards, then I can select the course that I am responsible for teaching. So I'm going to go to my comfort zone. I'm a former high school math teacher. So I'm going to go standards and I'm going to hit mathematics. And it's going to take me to a full listing of all, you'll notice on the left-hand side, all is checked, of all of the grade level standards that we have approved in the course of study for mathematics. But if, let's say that I teach, ninth grade, I may go here, let's do 8th grade. Let's say I teach 8th grade. Well, I'm going to click on 8th grade instead of all. And hopefully all 200 of us on the ALEX website at one time isn't going to overload it. But as soon as I start narrowing down my grade level, you'll see that on the right-hand side, the standards start narrowing down as well. So I'm left with only my 8th grade standards. And then I can find the standard, let's say that I'm working on a particular standard. We'll start at the top. And you'll notice that a large number of our standards here in ALEX have been unpacked for you. So if I click unpacked content here, it's going to outline, well, knowledge. Well, that fills in my know column. What do kids need to know in order for them to master this concept or this content? Understand. Our KUD, the U of the KUD is understanding. What do students have to understand? Well, for this particular standard, they've got to understand the 2 bullet points that we see listed here. And then finally, the do concept of the KUD, well, that's where I would say our skills come into play. What do they have to show or demonstrate at the end of my lesson, end of my instruction, that proves to me that they got it, that they mastered it? Now, all of our courses of study are not structured using these 3, the knowledge, skills, and understanding sort of headers. You'll see in the arts, for example, and I'll click back to the presentation. In our arts courses of study, when we unpack there, visual arts, for example, 3rd grade, I put an example in the chat or in the presentation. You'll see here the writers of the course study and those that were working on the ALEX website chose to give teachers unpack in a little bit of a different way, but give you some essential questions, which is also extremely helpful that you are starting your planning and your lesson with those ideas. And then because it's arts and there's this idea of performance component, there's a large amount of skills and those things that have to be demonstrated in order for students to say, or to demonstrate the mastery of a particular concept. And then you've got some anchor standards that are consistent across many of our courses of study in the arts area. And then some necessary vocabulary that we would want to build into our instruction so that as we're teaching students, these are words that we are also making sure that they're mastering in order for them to access the content in a meaningful way. You'll see in the presentation, once you go back and if you go back and reference it, I gave you screenshots from both. One example was the arts category and the other was in mathematics. So a couple of other resources I wanted you to have, because I think when we're unpacking standards and we're trying to wrap our mind around what am I supposed to get students to see and understand in my instruction, I think having a couple of items, especially items that were created by the State Department, is helpful in fully understanding what the expectation is in the course of study. So what you have on this slide and linked, and I think we're going to share all of these links with you, I'm sure we are. You have a couple of different documents. So we have what we used to call curriculum guides, and we have our differentiated support guides, or our DIG documents. So curriculum guides were the previous way that we broke down and we supported learning as it related to special education and the mastery of certain concepts in our courses. Our differentiated support guides are the newer version of those same documents. And so for every time we update a course of study, we will create a new DIG document. And so right now, the only two DIG documents that have been created are math and ELA, because those two are the most recent courses of study that have had a revision and have been updated. So we are currently in the process of updating the science course of study. So it will be the next DIG document that will be created. But let me show you what's in a DIG document, because especially for our special education folks on the call or on the chat, you may find this really helpful in deciding your objectives and helping students as they're moving through particular subject area content. So let's say I start with math. If I go here and let's say I'm working with a student, I'm going to scroll some. I apologize for the scrolling on your screen, but I'm going to scroll some. And let's say that I am, this particular standard is, you'll see that I'm looking at kindergarten because we'll start with the early one. And I'll find one of my standards. My standard 3 here is write numerals from 0 to 20. And this is what is listed in the course of study. So those documents that we were looking at earlier, what you see on Alex, this is what you'll see listed. But what the DIG document does is it breaks the standard down into really small pieces and chunks. And so as a teacher, I can say, okay, well, if I'm not exactly sure where to start with my instruction for this standard, then the DIG document gives me those very small, chunkable pieces that as a teacher, I can say, okay, well, I'm going to start here. If we've got to master this concept, if I've got to they've got to master standard 3, then they need to be able to do all of these 8 learning objectives. Well, the other great thing for a classroom teacher, and if I'm doing my lesson plan, and let's say I'm working in a school where, I have to have my objectives listed in my lesson plans, or I've got to post objectives on the board. Well, the DIG documents go ahead and they give you some of those objectives that are aligned to your standards. And so you can already start narrowing down your instruction and what particular objectives related to that standard you're going to focus on that day during your instructional time. And so you'll find that the ELA looks very similar, our English language arts DIG documents. And then the curriculum guides, the previous ones, we'll look at the science one, for example, but the curriculum guides are similar. Again, they are being updated, but you'll see, I'll just quickly navigate down. You'll find a particular standard. This particular standard says construct a model of natural habitats. And then you'll see that there are 4 learning objectives associated with that particular standard. So as a teacher, this breaks down the standard into very chunkable pieces, and I can offer this particular instruction to students in my class. Hopefully you'll find the DIG documents helpful. I don't want to rush us, but I am going to speed up a little bit as we move through pacing. But we have instructional pacing. That was another component that we wanted to discuss tonight with you all as participants. So in instructional pacing, I'm going to ask a really quick question for you. And that is, did your school at the beginning of the year or when you were first employed, did your school or district provide you with a pacing guide? They may have called it a curriculum map. They may have called it a curriculum guide. But were you provided with this for the courses that you teach? So if you will, if you'll scan the QR code on the screen, and then just give me a quick answer, yes, no, or I'm really not sure if I was given that or not. Awesome. So it looks like the majority of us in the call, in the Zoom room, were given pacing guides at the beginning of the year. There's a few of us that maybe haven't received those yet, are not quite sure if we even got them. Right. So a pacing guide, and I'm gonna allow you to please keep responding, but I'm gonna click through. A pacing guide is a document that maps out what will be taught in a specific content area for each grade level. It also creates a realistic time frame for instruction, and it established a paced student learning expectations, and it provides a starting point for the implementation of state standards. So how would I, if let's say that I was one of those folks that I said no to this, and I don't have a document that says I need to teach all of these things in first quarter and I need to teach all these things in second quarter, where would I start? And so what I wanted you to have was this idea, and we'll talk through these quickly. What are the steps that I would utilize in order to create a pacing guide for myself if I didn't have one that the district had provided me? And so the first thing you'll want to do, you'll see step one is understand your time frame. And this is really the practical side of creating a pacing guide, is understanding first, am I in a semester long or a year long course? How many days do I have that are available to me to teach? Let's say that I have a semester long course, that's 90 days. Well, if I may think I have 90 days, but I might need to calendar that out and say, okay, well, how many days are PD days? How many days are holidays? How many days are we devoting to pre-ACT testing or work keys testing, where I'm not going to have FaceTime with students? And then that's going to give me some number of the number of days that I have left to teach. And so then we start looking at, okay, what actual time do I have face-to-face with students? Then I'm looking at what we did earlier. What am I responsible for teaching in that length of time? Let's say of those 90 days, I only have 75 of them left. Well, then I've got to start looking at how many standards I'm responsible for. And where does that fall in terms of what the expectation is? Some other ideas or suggestions would be talking to folks in your building or in your district that have taught this particular course before. They most likely have a pacing guide. Laying out your framework, understanding, am I going to think in terms of units, how many days I'm devoting to units? Am I thinking about all I need to get done in one quarter? I will tell you that either one of those is a better option than trying to think about the whole year at one time. You just need to kind of start divvying out those standards. What are you going to cover in each quarter, or what am I going to cover in each unit? And then how many days I need for each of those units. And then just make sure as a new teacher, you want to make sure as you're moving through your pacing guide, after you teach a unit, and let's say I thought it was going to take me 8 days to teach it, but it took me 12, then I want to make sure I'm making note of that in my pacing so that for future reference, I'll know to allot more time to that. I know I moved through that quickly, but I wanted you to have this particular folder you have access to, and it has some sample pacing guides. It also has a couple of, I'll give you an example, couple of Excel documents in it where you can map out, obviously this is a couple of years old, you can change the dates here, and you can start saying, okay, what are the standards that I have to teach? What are the topics? What are the notes? You know, and you can see in this particular template, it's color coded, and you start inserting, okay, holidays, this is a PD day, this is when report cards are going to go home. And so as we're mapping out my standards and when I'm teaching certain things, I'm mapping those things out around the actual calendar for the school year. And so you have access to these documents and templates in the pacing guide folder. We wanted you to have that as a resource. Now, I think I am out of time, and I'm tossing it to Shane and to Keri to take the lead. And I'm going to try to make sure I keep up with them.
Thanks, William. I've also put in the chat a link document that has all the links for our session tonight in order with headers. So if you lost any of the links in the chat, they're all together on that one pager. But we're going to take just a few minutes to give you an introduction and an overview to our proficiency scales. And these are a great instructional resource that we think you'll be really happy to have. It's something that we are lucky as a state to have these for so many courses. So our first question that we want to kind of think through on the next slide is, what are proficiency scales? And so proficiency scales really help us break down the content of a standard and or the related parts of a standard into a sequence of learning goals. A lot of you guys we're talking in the chat about, with pacing and with curriculum planning, really thinking about what to teach when and how to meet your students where they are, both behaviorally and academically. And so these proficiency skills can help you do that. They're also clearly indicate a progression of skills. And so that's super valuable because brain research and educational research both show that students must learn in a progression of learning and skills and understanding so that they can demonstrate understanding and be able to lock on to that knowledge and add to it. Thirdly, it also helps teachers identify what knowledge, skill, or ability a student has attained. We think proficiency skills are especially helpful for you guys as emergency certified teachers, because there are some standards that you can look at and say, maybe I'm not sure what is expected here. And the proficiency scale both breaks down that standard in a way that you can understand it, as well as a way that your students can understand what's expected of them. And so proficiency skills take a standard or a group of standards and break them down into manageable chunks and learning goals. And they take you step by step through the prerequisite knowledge all the way to the on grade level learning and then application of that content. We have levels, which sometimes you'll see on certain versions of the proficiency scales called scores, but that score is not necessarily a numerical grade. It's just a progression along the proficiency scale. And so you'll see in this graphic that William has up on the screen, the levels of our scale start with 1 and end with 4, with 3 being the on grade level content for the students. So you want all students in your classroom to meet that level 3 proficiency in each of the standards for your grade level. This is the minimal goal for all students. So those students that are excelling in your classroom, and even the students that desire to be pushed even further than that, can go beyond that to the level 4 of advancing. So here on this picture, we've got a 3rd grade mathematics proficiency scale. Now, not all the proficiency scales look exactly the same, but this is the basic structure of proficiency scale that you will see for each of our content areas that we've got provided for you. And so you'll notice that there are slight differences, but the main parts exist no matter what subject you're viewing. And so in our digital resource hub or the links page, Shane has got it shared again in the chat for you. You'll notice that there is a grade, a topic, and a domain or standard for each proficiency scale right there at the top. And then you'll see that the first column contains your levels or your scores, where we've got the 2, the 3, and the 4. And then the second column gives us our criteria. These are what tells you that what's unpacked. It's very similar to the DIG documents that William showed you earlier. It is that unpacked content that is usually in student-friendly language that you can use as learning targets for each of your day-to-day classes. And again, don't forget that level 3 is what we're striving for in each of our students. And then last but not least, that third column gives us sample activities. And so this is something I know you guys talked last week a lot about curriculum and textbooks and how to use those. And so this is a great resource to add to go along with your textbook or your curricular resource to help make sure that you're teaching your standards to the depth and rigor that we expect in our course of study standards. So next, Shane is going to walk you through each of the levels a little bit more deeply and talk through that and how it works on a proficiency scale.
Thank you, Keri. As Keri was saying about proficiency scales, they indicate a progression of learning. And I love to think of proficiency scales as a roadmap for our standards. All of those criteria that are part of what we expect students to know and do are pretty much laid out in a roadmap. And I know Keri mentioned the levels that you'll see on the scale. Not all of our levels have criteria. Some of our half levels, like a 2.5 and a 3.5, are sort of in the middle because we want to be able to show and communicate growth that takes place with our students' learning. And I think Dr. Shields put in the chat, these are a great tool to use in parent conferences to communicate student learning to parents. And they're just a wonderful tool to help drive your instruction, to help with your planning and the way you assess the learning of students. And I love the progression of learning that is laid out on the proficiency scales. So we're going to take a very short dive into the different levels. So if you would go ahead and click to level 2, William. Level 2 is typically where we're going to start our instruction, and we call that our progressing level, because that is the foundational level that's going to lead up to mastery of our standards. Because, you know, we really can't start exactly where the level of mastery is. We have to get our students there and meet them where they're at. So the progressing level is going to have all of the prerequisite knowledge that we want our students to know. You can sort of see on this third grade math scale that it's got the specific vocabulary that students need to recognize, the basic processes that they need to do, and then the basic items or content that they need to know. And then we're going to put all of that together to master the standard. So you can see for this third grade math example that we've got on the slide, the prerequisite knowledge may be what they did in second grade math. So this one says, they may mentally add 10 or 100 to a number, or add and subtract up to 100. Well, at the next level, we may be trying to get them ready to do all of that up to 1,000. So you can see how the concepts build on each other, and then the learning gets more complex as you move up the scale. Okay, level 3 is what we are going to call proficient. And I think Keri said this a minute ago. Level 3 is the target for all students. We want all of our students to be proficient with our Alabama course of study standards. So this is the minimal goal for all the students. And oftentimes when you look at the scales, you may see the standard repeated because proficient is the goal, and that is outlined in our standards. You also may see the criteria unpacked a little bit more. So the criteria on this example sort of break down the criteria for addition, and then it breaks down the criteria for subtraction. And as I was saying, this is our target, and not all students are going to advance to level 4. You can go ahead, William. Thank you. But we do want to push the students who are ready for another challenge. One of the favorite quotes that I've heard in my career is, every student deserves a year of growth. So for our students that have already mastered what they were required to master, that's outlined in our standards, we want to push those students further. So level 4, we sort of call that an advancing level. And we're not pushing the students to another grade level, but we want to promote a deeper understanding of their grade level content. So a lot of times you're going to see a little bit more rigorous verbs with our standards. They may be applying or thinking at a different level. And it may be very vague. It may just say go above or beyond. It may just say apply at a deeper level, or it may get more specific than that. But we definitely want to challenge our students who do need that extra push. So our next slide is going to outline our state and service center regions. The slides that we just showed you were from one of our AMSTI trainings. So for any of you who teach math or science, I know we have a lot of K-5 people on the call, probably several math and science teachers at the secondary level on the call. If you would like regional support from AMSTI, you can scan the QR code that's on the slide. William has also set up a bit.ly, bit.ly.org or bit.ly.amsti.org/sites, and you can sort of see based on the map where your regional in-service center will be located. But we have math and science specialists all throughout the state who would love to share proficiency scales with you. And then all of this work was based on the work of Dr. Robert Marzano and his team. I think William showed you one of the books earlier. Our Marzano friends were actually in Birmingham just last week. And it's possible that some educators from your district came. And so if you know of anyone who went to that training, I'm sure they would love to share what they learned about high reliability schools and proficiency scales. And with that said, I think we're ready for our homework assignment before we take questions. So on the doc that we've shared for the night, we've sort of broken down a link to all of the proficiency scales based on subject. Some of those are going to be a PDF, and you can sort of click or just scroll down to your grade level. Some of them are Google Drive. I think if you're math or science, it's going to take you to our AMSTI website, and then you can click on your grade level and go to Google Drive there. But we want everyone just to find one proficiency scale related to something you are about to teach. If you're math and you're about to teach fractions, or if you're working on that right now, maybe you could find the scales written to our standards on fractions, or whatever you've got coming up. But the slides that we shared with you all tonight were really just a dip into the water. We didn't want to push you into the deep end with it. There's a lot more to know about proficiency scales, but it always starts with just a plan. And we'd love for everyone to sort of find one scale and take a screenshot of it. So I will let William explain more about that.
Well, I just want to add to, you'll notice on the handout that we shared with you with all of the links for the proficiency scales, we have two areas where we are still, there's still work to be done at the department in those areas in terms of the development of proficiency scales, and that being with our world languages as well as with our career technical education teachers. And so those two links that have been shared on the handout are not official Alabama State Department of Education documents or proficiency scales. Those are scales that I found online that are great examples of proficiency scales in those two areas, because I wanted you all to be able to see what those might look like for you in your content areas. And so you have some examples, but I also just wanted to preface by saying that in those two areas, that is work yet to still be completed by us at the department. And so we didn't have official documents to give you all, but I wanted you all to have some exposure with what a proficiency scale would look like for those two content areas. And I think Dr. Shields has a couple of comments to make, and then we'll kind of move into our questioning phase.
Awesome. And I've been trying to man the chat, which has been, I've really enjoyed that this time because I can really read them. But yes, these standards, this is our job description. It's not a pick and choose. When I was teaching 8th grade English, when I was teaching 9th grade English, that is the roadmap. That is the expectation for me to, at a minimum, meet every one of those standards, and also be thinking how I can prepare my students for what's ahead, and then reteaching, revisiting specific skills they've already had. Now, next week, just to kind of set you up, now that we've talked about standards and we're talking about proficiency scales, this gives us some great footing for the next thing. And we had a lot of questions about this at the beginning of our session in week 1, was how to write a lesson plan. And I saw someone in the chat a few weeks ago say, my district or my school, we have I don't remember, 14-page lesson plan. I just remember it was a long lesson plan. Now, some of your schools may require very specific lesson plan templates. And so you will hear us say next week, you do what your schools say. But in terms of what should be in a lesson plan, how to create one, what to look at, What we're going to do is break into 2 sessions, just like we did for classroom management. We're going to have an elementary session with Miss Lee Twig, wherever she is. I can't see her. Lee, will you like do a little shake? I mean, you're pretty easy to find with the entire face makeup. And Carissa, I think, is on here as well. Carissa Lambert. If you will wave so they can see you, Carissa is going to be leading the secondary session. So just like last time, we're all going to come here, and then I'm going to send the secondary folks. I haven't decided yet. Maybe we'll send the elementary folks. But we'll break into 2 sessions so that we can record everything, and you will meet with those for the rest of the session. Also, and I say this especially for Lee and Carissa, because I know they have a very interesting coffee mug collection. So next week is bring your favorite coffee cup or mug or whatever that might be. And so next week we'll drink a little coffee, drink a little tea, or whatever you should have in your mug, as we learn about writing very effective lesson plans and implementing them.
Dr. Shields, just so no one, we want to give everyone ample opportunity. Our plan is to have our mug lineup. So if you've got multiple mugs that you're proud of, we're going to be changing out throughout the night. So if anyone else would like to, you'll see us lifting up new ones.
Okay, that's a challenge. All right.
Yeah. So
I follow Carissa on social media, and I am always in awe of her coffee mugs. So I'm very excited about that. Always trying to make it fun. So yes, that's next week. If we'll go to the next slide. This is just, and we'll start putting those links in the chat. And then we can really start our Q&A. But as always, we kind of leave you with completing the attendance form. And this is where you will put in your intersession homework assignment from last week. We were asked you to go through that equitable practices kind of checklist to create a very positive classroom culture and hopefully mitigate some of those negative behaviors that we've been hearing a lot about these last few weeks. We're very interested to see which one of those seem to be the most impactful for you, because that will help us in helping other emergency certificate teachers to say, you know, we've heard a lot of success with X, Y, or Z. Remember, of course, you have the slides. All of this will be posted. The recording will be posted on our prep website. We will give you a moment to go in, mark your attendance. Remember, this has to be done tonight. I can't do this tomorrow. And then we're going to stay online and answer any questions you have, because I think they did an incredible job going over, trying to think of all of the folks we have in the room, K-12, every content area. I just hats off to you 3 for being able to put together a presentation that was so holistic. I saw a lot of shouts and praise when you lifted up the work for our teachers who are serving students with special needs and special circumstances, as well as our teachers who are serving students who speak multiple languages. So thank you all for that. Great job. I'll pass it back to you for Q&A.
Dr. Shields, could I jump in? Because I know we had a counselor say, what could I use as a counselor? And on the doc for tonight, at the bottom, I put a link to behavior and work habit scales. So for those of you mentioning classroom management, you may want to start with one of those scales instead of a standard scale. It'd be a great starting point.
thank you, Shane.
Shane and William and Keri, you might want to say something similar for those special education teachers we have in the room. I mean, choosing a specific content area, grade span, thinking about the students that you serve. And that would be the same thing for our multilingual or ESL teachers as well.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Shields, for reminding me. I know we talked about that, and here I didn't say it. So yes, our goal is for the homework assignment for our special education teachers and those that serve in roles where they are support roles of students with various needs, that you would find a standard for a subject that you're working with a student, content area you're working with a student in the upcoming weeks, similar to our core content and all of our other subject areas, that you would pull a scale that relates to some of the work you're doing one-on-one with a student and the support that you're providing for a student, because you're going to find that also helpful in kind of designing what that support would look like for those students. I'm going to click out of sharing my screen. We'll go back where I can see folks' faces. And then